Hi again, I'm Professor Monroe from the Applied Ethics Department, and in this video we'll talk about government codes of ethics. We'll talk about what government codes of ethics are, we'll talk about some uniquenesses of government codes of ethics, and then discuss their strengths and weaknesses. First, a government code of ethics is a code of ethics for public officials and employees, those who work in government at the federal, state, or local level and whose salaries are paid by citizens via taxes. That ranges from elected officials working at the federal level, like your congressmen or your senators, all the way down to the folks working at the tax collector's office in your local community. Anyone whose job is a governmental capacity has a government code of ethics. Now, how are government codes of ethics unique or different from other types of codes of ethics? Well, weirdly, they're usually kind of a hybrid between what a corporate code of ethics looks like and a professional code. So they're kind of weird mix there. They look like corporate codes in style and function, meaning they're written by people in authority, typically with the people further down the ladder in mind, so they tend to be authoritarian in tone, but they're written and enforced at a peer level like professional codes. So there are groups of folks in the government, in the legislatures, who write these codes of ethics and then are themselves expected to follow them. So it's a weird hybrid between a corporate code and a professional code in terms of the authorship. Because they're the product of government, rules adopted in codes of ethics become laws. So government codes are, by definition, written at the basic level. Remember that the basic level codes of ethics is just about behaviors that follow the law as written, or the letter of the law. Furthermore, government codes are different because they tend to be more limited in scope or the range of issues they cover than other categories of codes. So professionals have a wide range of issues that they'll face in their daily life, and business has its focuses, but government codes tend to be narrower focused than those other two, and weirdly they tend to focus on things like financial conflicts of interest, almost to the exclusion of virtually everything else. So the narrow focus of government codes of ethics leaves out many interesting ethical issues that might pop up in the operations of government. This isn't the place to explore what those ethical issues would be. There are other areas of study for that. But it is interesting to note that the government codes of ethics are incomplete in terms of talking about the range of issues that someone working in government might face. There are some strengths to government codes. First, government codes of ethics give citizens a public statement of ethical conduct to which public servants can be held. So the public can look at a government code and say, here at least are the standards that you must live up to, and hold members of the government accountable for what they do. Government officials have to at least observe a minimum level of ethical conduct, and that's stated in their code, so there's at least bare minimum standards there. We can't just generally accuse government people of all being corrupt, because they've at least got some rules to follow. That was a joke, by the way. There are some weaknesses to the government codes of ethics, however, and those are important to note. First, they invite a loophole mentality because they're written at a basic level of code. So it's just about following the law as written because they are laws themselves. Many people will spend their time trying to find ways around the rules rather than taking them seriously or following them. That is, they'll try to find loopholes and getting out of following the code of ethics. It's also a little bit strange that a code of ethics for government employees doesn't ask more of the folks under its authority. You'd think that, like professionals, because there's a relationship of public trust between the folks in government and the general public, that we'd expect members of government to have higher ethical standards of conduct than regular citizens. But in fact, in many cases, their expectations are lower than, say, professionals or other members of the general public. And this is a little bit strange. Another problem sometimes, or weakness in government codes of ethics, is that they're sometimes inconsistent because when the codes were written, they were maybe subject to some bizarre political things going on. So you see some weird inconsistencies sometimes, or strange focuses in what the code is asking because of political currents or conflicts going on amongst the people who actually wrote them. And lastly, there are problems with implementing, monitoring, and enforcing codes of ethics because they change rather frequently, these government codes, and it's hard to keep clear on what's expected and who's supposed to be enforcing them, so that becomes a bit of a weakness with government codes of ethics. And that wraps up our discussion of government codes and our discussion of codes of ethics in general. Good luck with the rest of your studies.